A lesser-known Waffen-SS division was the 4th SS Polizei Panzergrenadier Division. This Waffen-SS police formation conducted operations both at and behind the front line. The division was in many areas of the European battlefield during the war. The men belonging to this division committed one of the worst crimes of the Waffen-SS in World War II, in which they massacred over 200 Greek civilians, among which many women and children. Perhaps, therefore, this division was one of the most ruthless Waffen-SS divisions. Good to have you back on the channel. If you're new, my name is Stefan. I'm a Dutch history teacher and I make videos about history for you. If you like that, please consider subscribing and don't forget to hit that notification bell. Let's start. The so-called Polizei or police division did not start as a Waffen-SS unit. It was formed in October 1939 by drafting approximately 15,000 members of the Ordnungspolizei and attaching army artillery and signals units. The Ordnungspolizei, ORPO, and the Sicherheitspolizei, SIPO, were the two divisions into which Himmler divided the German police in 1936. The ORPO was the regular police force, also known as the Grüne Polizei, because of its green uniforms. The SIPO consisted of the Geheime Staatspolizei, the Gestapo, the Kriminalpolizei, the Kripo, and the border police. All German police forces came under the authority of the SS, but this was not considered to be on a par with the armed SS divisions. What is interesting to note is that despite being under authority of the SS, they did not wear SS uniforms. Initially, the troops wore uniforms as diversified as the sources they came from. Police dark blue, police green, Wehrmacht field gray, old SS light brown. The standard issued uniform became Wehrmacht field gray, but many former Ordnungspolizei officers and NCOs kept their green uniform for a time and modified them. They had OD insignia and insignia of the Polizei division. On their field cap, they wore the police type short-winged eagle and swastika. On the right side of their steel helmet, the shield-shaped silver on black Ordnungspolizei decal. Just like with the SS, the Nazi eagle and swastika was worn on the sleeve. Tropical uniforms were worn in the Balkans during the summer. The police division underwent training near the Black Forest until the spring of 1940. At the same time, they performed occupation duties in Poland. When looking at supplies, the Polizei division did not get the best kit, to put it mildly, where Leibstandarte was given nothing but the best equipment and hardware. Polizei was being supplied with obsolete horse-drawn weapons. They were not given priority over the Wehrmacht, the regular German armed forces. The delivery to the police troops was often very slow, and wrangling over the distribution of weapons was a constant problem. Their first action was during the invasion of France and the Low Countries in 1940. The men of the unit were initially held in reserve with Heeresgruppe C in the Rhineland, going into action on the 9th of June when it crossed the river Ain. Around the Argonne Forest, they fought against French rearguard troops. They had to fight bitterly for every inch of ground and performed hand-to-hand combat against the French. They did overcome their foe, but did suffer substantial losses. Before the campaign was officially over, they were taken out of the line. This happened on June 20th. After this, the Polizei division was placed in East Prussia and continued its training. They amounted for 17,347 men. Commanders judged that the troops had not been aggressive and fanatical enough and paled in comparison with elite units like Totenkopf. But the commanders were keen on improving the reputation of the Polizei troops on the battlefield. When in reserve, it was strengthened with additional troops and equipment, but it didn't receive everything it needed. They conducted artillery training for the proposed invasion of the British Island, but this invasion was never carried out. Therefore, they were trained for the impending invasion of the Soviet Union. early 1941, the administration for the formation passed from the police to the SS Operations Office, the material and training headquarters for the Waffen-SS. The men remained policemen and not members of the SS. Their next action would be in the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa commenced on the 22nd of June 1941, and the Polizei Division joined the German forces on the 27th, part of the reserve of Heeresgruppe Nord. Parts of the German front stagnated and were embroiled in heavy fighting. Across the long front, soldiers were entangled in miles of earth walls, anti-tank ditches, wire barricades, dozens of defensive pillboxes, and not the least, the Soviet tenacity for fighting. The police troops soon found themselves cut off in the swampland. Determined not to be surrounded and annihilated, they fought their way north of Luga. Here the division showed its audacity and value on the battlefield. Against overwhelming odds, the units, supported by Wehrmacht formations, encircled and destroyed the Soviet forces. The action around Luga made them lose 2,000 men, dead and wounded, in tough fighting through difficult terrain of dense forests and mosquito-plagued swamps, among which the divisional commander, SS Gruppenführer Arthur Mühlverstedt. The situation had gotten worse as temperatures plummeted. The Red Army began an offensive. In January 1942, the division was employed along the Volkhov River, and the month after, the unit became officially part of the Waffen-SS. Army and police uniforms and insignia were replaced with Waffen-SS equivalents. However, the unit continued to wear its police emblem. In the early months of the year, the now SS Polizei Division saw fierce combat against the Soviet Second Shock Army and spent the remaining time of the year at the Leningrad front. It gained a reputation for reliability, but never reached an elite status like Waffen-SS Divisions 1 to 3 did. Combat attrition saw the formation's strength steadily whittled down. In January 1943, they came under repeated attacks by the Soviets around the south of Lake Ladoga. The Polizei Division managed to fight off several Soviet attacks. However, the following month, the Red Army broke through the German lines and the Axis forces had to retreat westward to new defensive positions at Kolpino. Despite holding these new positions, the losses were severe. Elements of the division were withdrawn to Silesia and the unit was reformed into a motorized Panzergrenadier Division, while the remaining units were formed into smaller Kampfgruppen. The SS Volunteer Division Netherlands, SS Vrijwilligenlegion Nederlanden, was added to bolster its strength. These units remained at the Eastern Front, while the rest was transferred. In May 1943, the SS Polizei Panzergrenadier Division was sent to the Balkans, to northern Greece to be specific. Greece was invaded by Italy in 1940, but Mussolini wasn't able to defeat the country. Hitler had to bail his ally out and invaded Greece and Yugoslavia as well in April 1941 in a swift campaign. As Greece came under different occupiers, Italians, Bulgarians, and Germans, a famine occurred as the country was looted by the Axis forces. Partisan forces arose, and the Germans conducted anti-partisan operations to keep order. In December, the division had over 16,000 men, and some elements were posted to Salonika, and other units carried on with their actions against the Greek partisans. In March 1944, the troops operated around Salonika and were engaged in several clashes with the Greek partisans. Anti-partisan operations intensified, and the police troops got more and more hostile against the local population who they blamed for aiding the resistance fighters. Under command of SS Hauptsturmführer Fritz Lautenbach, they hanged and shot over 200 civilians of the town of Distomo. They beheaded the village priest near Delphi, and in central Greece, 28 civilians were murdered in Ipati. They also razed countless of villages. In several towns they committed atrocities, which I'll cover in detail later. Until the summer of 1944, the division remained in Greece and was then going back into the line to face the advancing Red Army. Late 1944, the unit joined the German forces in reinforcing the front around Belgrade, Yugoslavia. They suffered heavy losses against the Red Army that, together with the Yugoslav partisans, launched the Belgrade Offensive. By September 1944, the formation was down to around half its strength. In January 1945, they were being pushed back into Slovakia and from there transferred north into Pomerania and then to Danzig, now Gdansk. It saw defensive battles against the Red Army at Tornu Severin, thus allowing the army's 1st Gebirgsdivision to escape total destruction. They themselves got caught in the encirclement of Danzig, but were evacuated by sea to Swinemünde. Near Stettin, the remnants of the division fought their way over the Elbe to surrender to US forces at Wittenberg-Lenzen. Some elements that had stayed behind surrendered to the Soviet forces. The SS Polizei Division was never an elite unit, but from its origins as effectively a second-rate reserve unit, it managed to transform into a reasonably effective fighting division. A number of 19 soldiers of the division were decorated with the Knight's Cross. The Polizei Division had led an extraordinary existence on the battlefield. It had made its debut on the Western Front in 1940. It had bled in Russia a year later, fought a number of defensive battles in 1943 and undertook extensive partisan operations in Greece. A few months later, in early 1945, the remnants of its force battled its way across East Prussia in the defense of the Battle of the Baltic and fought a number of isolated encounters until it was either destroyed or captured. But Polizei had tainted its war record with monstrous crimes against humanity, which will never be forgotten or indeed forgiven. And that brings me back to what they did in Greece. In the summer and autumn of 1944, the men of the SS police were involved in atrocities against Greek civilians in Klysura and Distomo, as well as other towns. Especially the Distomo massacre gained notoriety. In 2 hours, 218 residents, about a quarter of the total population of the mountain village in central Greece, were killed in retaliation for an attack by Greek partisans on 3 German soldiers. Members of the Waffen-SS visited every house in Distomo and killed everyone inside. After retaliatory action, German troops burned down the village. Especially women and children were killed in a retaliatory action. Many men were spared because they were working in the fields at the time of the attack. Of the 218 victims, 53 were under the age of 16. Some were even infants. Even pregnant women were not spared. Dimitris Tsitsikos recalled, "My mother cried and cried. We are with a small child, and the Germans shot at my mother and pulled her apron. We tried to hide. Then the neighbor called out, 'There is a small child crying.' The Germans killed her and also the little child. Wherever we looked, there was blood. They left no one alive. People, dogs, women, little children. They killed everyone." The American Time magazine published a harrowing photograph of Maria Vantiska, who lost her mother in the massacre. If you want to learn more about Greece during the Second World War, it is an interesting and often overlooked chapter of World War II. Click on these 2 videos. Many thanks for watching. History Hustler signing off.